Your bank has a product it calls a savings account. It pays you 2%, maybe 2.5%. And it tells you that is responsible. That is security. That is the smart move while you figure things out. Here is what your bank does not put on the brochure. Inflation ran at 3% last year, which means your SAFE account returned -1% in real terms. You did not save money. You paid the bank to lose it for you. That is not an accident. That is the product working exactly as designed.
I want to tell you about Sarah. Sarah is 34. She works in HR at a mid-sized company in Toronto. She earns about $68,000 a year. She is not rich. She is not struggling. She is exactly the kind of person who does not make the news, which is exactly why what is happening to her matters.
3 years ago, Sarah did something genuinely responsible. She had been carrying a small amount of consumer debt, and she cleared it. Then she took the money she had been putting toward debt payments, about $400 a month, and started saving it into a high-interest savings account at her bank, the one the advisor recommended, the one with the CDIC insurance, the one that is, in the advisor's words, completely safe. Over 3 years, Sarah saved $14,000. She checks the account regularly. The number goes up. She feels good about it. She should. $14,000 of genuine discipline, built slowly, touched by nothing.
Here is what Sarah does not know. That $14,000 in real terms, in terms of what it can actually buy today versus what it could have bought when she started, is worth less than it was when she began saving it. Not in the account. The account is fine. The number is there. But the world around that number got more expensive faster than the account grew. Groceries, rent, insurance. The cost of being alive in Toronto climbed, while the savings account paid 2.5%.
She was disciplined. She was consistent. She did not spend it, and the system still took from her, silently, without a statement, without a line item, without her consent. That is the inflation tax. And Sarah is not the exception. She is the majority. Here is where the mistake comes from. And I want to be precise about this, because it is not stupidity and it is not carelessness. It is something more structural.
We are taught from the beginning that risk is the enemy. Do not gamble. Do not speculate. Put your money somewhere safe. Sarah's parents said it. The bank said it. The television commercial with the smiling advisor and the sunset said it. And so Sarah built her saving strategy around one word: safe. A savings account is safe. A GIC is safe. A term deposit is safe. A high-interest savings account with the word high right in the name, as if 2.5% is an achievement, is safe.
The problem is that safe is not a complete description. It describes one thing accurately. The nominal number will not go down. Your $14,000 will not become $13,800. The bank guarantees the number. What it does not guarantee, what it does not even mention, is the purchasing power of that number, what those $14,000 can actually buy. That is the piece that erodes automatically, daily, without notification. Your bank knows this. Your bank built the product knowing this, and your bank profits from the gap between what it earns on your money and what it pays you to keep it there.
When I was a student, I did the same thing Sarah is doing now. I had $1,000 in a savings account. I checked it every month. It grew by $3, by $6. I thought that number sitting still meant I was winning. What I did not know is that a number that does not fall is not the same as a number that holds its value. I learned that later. Most people learn it too late or never.
Let me show you exactly what is happening to Sarah's $14,000. Not approximately, exactly. Sarah's savings account pays 2.5% per year. Her bank sends a statement. The number climbs. After 1 year, $14,000 becomes $14,350. After 3 years, it will be approximately $15,080. The statement looks like progress. Now here is the number the bank does not show her.
Inflation in Canada over the past 3 years averaged around 3% per year, which means the purchasing power of Sarah's money, which she can actually buy with it, has declined by roughly 3% annually. The formula is simple. Your real return equals your nominal interest rate minus inflation. 2.5% minus 3% equals -0.5%. Sarah's real return is negative.
Not catastrophically, not visibly. 0.5% sounds like nothing, but 0.5% compounded over 3 years on $14,000 is about $210 of purchasing power she will never recover. And that is the conservative version, using current post-peak inflation
At the height of the cycle in 2022, when Canadian inflation hit 8.1%, the same account was losing 5.5% in real terms every single year. In that environment, Sarah's discipline was being undone faster than she could build it.
8.1% inflation, 2.5% savings account, negative 5.5% real return. On money she was protecting. That is not a market crash. She did not lose anything in the market. She sat in the safe place, and the safe place cost her 5.5% of her purchasing power in a single year. Nobody sent a statement about that number. Nobody called.
Sarah went to her bank 6 months ago and asked about GICs. Her advisor smiled. This happens all the time. Someone gets uncomfortable with the savings account and the bank upgrades them to the next product on the shelf. A 5-year GIC at 4.5%, locked in, CDIC insured, safe. Sarah almost did it. Let us look at what would have happened if she had.
4.5% sounds significantly better than 2.5%. It is, nominally. But at Sarah's marginal tax rate of approximately 24%, where most middle-income Ontario earners land, that 4.5% becomes 3.4% after tax. She pays tax on the GIC interest every year, even though she cannot touch the money. The government taxes the nominal gain, not the real one. So she pays full income tax on earnings that do not even keep pace with inflation. 3.4% after tax minus 3% inflation equals 0.4% real return. After 5 years of locking her money away, after 5 years of not being able to access it if her car dies, if her hours get cut, if anything happens that costs money, and always does.
0.4% real return per year on money she could not access for 5 years. In Toronto, that is roughly 1 streetcar ride per year, per $1,000 locked. That is what SAFE pays in 2026. Sarah is in Toronto, but this math is not a Toronto problem. In Vancouver, where rent for a 1-bedroom averages $2,500 a month and groceries run higher than anywhere else in the country, the purchasing power erosion on a savings account is even more brutal in practical terms. Same nominal rate, higher cost baseline. Every dollar that does not grow fast enough loses ground faster.
In Calgary, there is a small advantage Alberta has: no provincial income tax, which means the after-tax interest on that GIC is marginally better. 3.7% after federal tax instead of 3.4%. Against 3% inflation, the real return is 0.7% instead of 0.4%. The GIC is still barely above zero. And Calgary's housing costs have risen sharply in the last 3 years, with no rent controls to buffer it. In Montreal, where the cost of living is lower, the savings account actually buys more per dollar than in Toronto or Vancouver. But Montreal's inflation over the last cycle ran hot on food and services. The gap between what the account pays and what life costs narrowed from both directions.
The geography shifts the details. It does not change the structure. The savings account is losing in every city. Now, I want to show you the other version of Sarah's story, the one that exists if she makes one different decision. Same $14,000, same 3 years, same Sarah, same income, same discipline, same consistency. The only difference, instead of a savings account, the money goes into a TFSA, invested in a broad market index ETF. A fund like XEQT, Global Diversification, management fee under 0.2% per year. No advisor, no commissions. Available on Wealthsimple or Questrade in about 15 minutes.
The historical average return on a globally diversified index ETF, measured over any rolling 20-year period in modern market history, is approximately 8% per year. Some years are better, some are worse. 2022 was down. 2023 recovered. The long-run average holds. At 8%, Sarah's $14,000 after 3 years is approximately $17,600. Against the savings account version at $15,080, the gap after 3 years is already $2,500. That is a month of rent in Calgary. That is $600 more than she put in monthly for the entire second year.
Now run it out to 10 years. The savings account version of Sarah's $14,000 at 2.5% for 10 years, adjusted for 3% inflation, has the purchasing power of approximately $11,300 in today's dollars. She started with $14,000. 10 years of discipline. She ends with the equivalent of $11,300. The TFSA ETF version at 8% for 10 years, $30,200. In nominal terms, real purchasing power at 3% inflation, approximately $22,500. The gap at year 10, $11,200. In real purchasing power, on the same original $14,000, on the same discipline, on the same person, just a different box.
$11,200 is not a rounding error. In Toronto, that is 4.5 months of a one-bedroom apartment. In Calgary, it is 4 months. It is a year and a half of groceries for one person. It is the difference between having an emergency fund and not having one after the emergency. That gap came from one decision, not from earning more, not from spending less, from which account Sarah put her money in. Here is the part that most people miss, and it is the part that matters most if you are reading this and you have been in a savings account for years already. Compounding is not linear. The early years look small. Year 1 difference between the two paths might be $500. Not dramatic, easy to dismiss. But compounding is multiplicative. You earn returns on returns. The divergence accelerates over time in a way that feels unfair when you finally see it. In year 1, the gap between a savings account and an ETF is noise. In year 5, it is a conversation. In year 10, it is a year of someone's salary. In year 20, it becomes the kind of number that changes what retirement looks like.
20 years, $14,000. Savings account at 2.5% nominal, 3% inflation, real purchasing power of approximately $8,600. TFSA ETF at 8%, same inflation adjustment, approximately $29,000. The gap, $20,400 on $14,000 that Sarah already had, on money she was already saving, on a box. $20,400 is what the wrong account costs. Not the wrong stock, not the wrong timing, the wrong account.
Sarah does not know this yet, and she is not alone. Most Canadians who keep long-term savings in a HISA are not doing it because they analyzed the options and concluded it was optimal. They are doing it because the bank made it easy, the advisor recommended it, and nobody ever handed them a piece of paper that said, here is what this account actually costs you, in dollars, per year, adjusted for inflation and tax. That document does not exist. The bank does not produce it. The advisor does not hand it out. The system depends on you not running that calculation. Sarah does not know this yet. She checks her savings account, and the number goes up, and she feels responsible. The system is working. She is doing it right. She is not doing it right. She is doing it safely. Those are not the same thing. And nobody who profits from her keeping that money where it is has any reason to tell her otherwise.
I want you to do something right now. Pause this video. Open your bank app, find the account where your savings are sitting. Look at the interest rate. Write it down or remember it. Then go to statisticscanada.gc.ca and find the most recent CPI number for Canada. It takes 30 seconds. Subtract your interest rate from that number. What you are left with is your real return. Most people who do that calculation find a number between 0 and -1. Some find worse. A few find a slim positive if they locked into a GIC at the right moment. But the majority find they are treading water or going backwards, while the account says they are growing. The question now is not why this is happening. You know why. The question is what you do about it. And the answer is simpler than the financial industry wants you to believe. It does not require an advisor. It does not require a complicated portfolio. It requires one decision and about 15 minutes. Let me finish Sarah's story. Or rather, let me show you how it ends if she makes the right call this week. Sarah does not close her savings account. She does not move everything. She keeps 2 months of living expenses, about $5,000, in the HISA, liquid, accessible. The insurance premium on life's unpredictability, that cost is real, and it is worth paying. The other $9,000, the money she has no specific plan for within the next 3 years, goes into a TFSA. She opens a Wealth Simple account. She buys XEQT. She sets up a pre-authorized contribution of $200 a month, the amount she was adding to the savings account anyway. She does not touch it. She does not check it every week. She leaves it alone.
In 10 years, Sarah is 44. The $9,000 she moved, plus $200 a month for 10 years, a total contribution of $33,000, has grown to approximately $58,000 at 8%. Inside the TFSA, zero tax on withdrawal, zero tax on the growth year over year. The savings account version of the same behavior, $33,000 in,
approximately 36,500 out, in nominal terms. In real purchasing power after inflation, approximately 26,000. The TFSA path in real terms, approximately 43,000. The gap at 44, $17,000. On decisions Sarah makes this week.
The TFSA is not just a better return. It is a different structural reality. When your savings account pays you 2.5%, the government taxes that income. At Sarah's marginal rate, she keeps 1.9 of the 2.5. The rest goes to CRA every year on money she may not have even spent yet. Inside a TFSA, there is no tax, not annually, not on withdrawal, not ever. The 8% return inside the TFSA is 8%. The full number compounds. The government cannot reach it.
The cumulative contribution room for a Canadian who has been eligible since 2009 is now $109,000. The 2026 annual room is $7,000. If you have not been using your TFSA, that room has been accumulating. It does not expire. It carries forward indefinitely, which means there is a version of this conversation that is still available to you regardless of how long you have been sitting in the wrong account. I want to be specific about what the actual investment looks like, because this is where a lot of people get stuck. They hear invest your savings, and they picture an advisor's office and a complicated portfolio and quarterly rebalancing and fees they do not understand. That is not what this is. XEQT is one fund. It holds thousands of companies across dozens of countries: Canada, the United States, international developed markets, emerging markets. It rebalances automatically. It costs 0.2% per year in fees. You buy it on Wealthsimple or Questrade, both of which are commission-free for ETF purchases and both of which are regulated Canadian platforms. The whole setup takes about 15 minutes.
That is the entire strategy. One fund, one account, one pre-authorized contribution. Leave it alone. Time does the rest. This is not a simplified version of the right approach. For the overwhelming majority of Canadian savers at most income levels, this is the right approach. The mutual funds your bank sells have management fees that average 2% per year. On a $50,000 portfolio, that is $1,000 per year in fees. Fees that come directly out of your return before you see it. The one ETF TFSA has no advisor, no commission, and fees of approximately $100 per year on the same portfolio. The math on fees alone makes the bank's managed products structurally inferior in almost every scenario.
3 steps. Specific, in order. Step 1. Calculate your true savings number. How much do you currently have in savings accounts, GICs, term deposits, HISAs, that is not genuinely earmarked for something specific in the next 12 months? That is your investable amount. Everything beyond your 2 to 3 month emergency buffer. Step 2. Open a Wealthsimple or Questrade account if you do not have one. Take 15 minutes. Have your SIN number ready. The account opening is online and straightforward. Inside the account, open a TFSA if you do not already have one. Check your available contribution room on CRA My Account. It takes 2 minutes, and the number is there.
Step 3. Transfer your investable amount up to your contribution room into the TFSA. Buy XEQT. Set up a pre-authorized monthly contribution for whatever you are already saving. Do not adjust it based on market news. Do not check it more than quarterly. The strategy works by being left alone. That is it. That is the full move. No advisor, no complicated analysis, no market timing. A 15-minute decision that Sarah has not made yet, but that you can make before Friday. Before I close, 5 mistakes I have watched Canadians make on this exact topic. Not theoretical. These are patterns I have seen repeatedly. Mistake 1. Calling a HISA a savings strategy. A high-interest savings account is a holding place, not an investment, not a strategy. The word high in the name is marketing copy from an era when interest rates were lower and 2.5% felt like something. At current inflation levels, it is not high. It is barely above 0 in real terms on a good day and below 0 on most others.
Using a HISA as your primary savings vehicle for money you will not need for 3 or more years is not being conservative. It is accepting a guaranteed slow loss in exchange for the feeling of safety. The feeling is real, the safety is not. Cost over 20 years on a $14,000 balance, approximately $20,400 in real purchasing power compared to a TFSA index ETF.
Mistake 2. Locking into a GIC without running the after-tax math. This is the most expensive mistake on this list, and it happens to people who are trying to do the right thing. They feel uncomfortable with the savings account. The advisor offers the GIC. It sounds better, 4.5% instead of 2.5%. They lock in, they feel organized. What they do not calculate, after income tax at their marginal rate, the 4.5 becomes 3.4. After inflation at 3%, the real return is 0.4. They gave up liquidity, access to their own money, for a real return of 0.4% per year. And at their marginal rate, every dollar of GIC interest appears on their tax return whether or not they could spend it that year.
The alternative, same money, TFSA index ETF, fully accessible within 3 business days with no penalty, earns 8% gross, 0% tax, 5% real. The GIC was not the upgrade they thought it was. It was a more expensive version of the same mistake. Cost, depending on time horizon and tax bracket, between $30,000 and $70,000 on a $20,000 position over 15 to 20 years. Mistake 3. Waiting for the right moment. The market is always doing something. It is always either too high, too volatile, too uncertain, or recovering from something. There is no neutral moment. There is no window where the headlines stop and the chart looks calm and the entry feels obvious. That window does not exist.
Every month spent waiting for the right conditions is a month of compounding that does not happen. The Canadian investor who waited through 2022, which was genuinely a difficult year, markets were down significantly, missed the partial recovery of 2023 and the growth of 2024 and 2025. The one who invested in March 2020, when every headline was catastrophic, tripled their money by 2022. Time in market beats timing the market. This has been confirmed by every credible long-run study of equity returns. The right moment is today. Not because today is a particularly good entry point, because today is the day you have.
Mistake 4. Treating all savings as emergency fund. The emergency fund is real, and it is necessary. 3 to 6 months of living expenses, liquid, accessible, in a HISA. That money should not be in the market. The purpose of an emergency fund is to be there when you need it instantly, not in 3 business days, not subject to market conditions, not locked in a GIC. The inflation cost on the emergency fund is the price of liquidity. Pay it willingly.
The mistake is treating all savings as emergency fund, keeping 2 years of expenses in a savings account because it feels safer than splitting it. The emergency fund needs to be liquid. Everything beyond it, with a horizon of 3 or more years, does not. It needs to grow. And treating long-term money as if it needs the same liquidity as emergency money costs the difference between the 2 return profiles applied to the entire balance. Most Canadians are not keeping 3 months in savings. They are keeping 3 years and paying the inflation penalty on all of it. Mistake 5. Never calculating the real number. This might be the most fundamental mistake of all. Most people know their savings account balance. Almost nobody knows their real return. They know the nominal interest rate. They do not subtract inflation. They do not subtract income tax on that interest. They do not arrive at the number that actually describes what their money is doing in terms of real-world purchasing power. And because they never run that calculation, the savings account always looks fine. The number is going up. The system is working.
It is not working. It is just not failing loudly enough to notice. Calculate your real return. Nominal interest rate minus your marginal tax applied to that interest minus inflation. If the number is negative, and for most Canadians in most savings accounts right now, it is, that is not a coincidence.
And it is not a temporary condition. It is the structural design of the product. And knowing that number is the first step toward doing something about it. 5 mistakes, 5 price tags. None of them required a market crash. None of them required a bad decision in the conventional sense. All 5 are the result of choosing safety without understanding what safety actually costs.
Sarah's savings account will be there next month. The number will be a little higher, the statement will look fine, and her purchasing power will be a little lower. Again, for the 4th year in a row, without a statement, without a line item, without anyone calling. Your bank has a product it calls a savings account. It is not designed to make you wealthy. It is designed to hold your money while the bank lends it to someone else at a significantly higher rate. The interest it pays you is the minimum required to prevent you from moving on. The inflation that erodes your purchasing power is not their problem. It is yours.
The fix is not complicated. A TFSA, a diversified index ETF, a pre-authorized contribution. Leave it alone. The vehicle is free. The room is already yours. The decision is the only thing between Sarah's story and a different one. Nobody called it a tax, but the math does not care what you call it. If this landed, drop a like and put it in front of one person who still believes their savings account is a savings strategy. Next week, the hidden costs of buying a home in Canada that never appear in any mortgage calculator. It is going to be uncomfortable. I will see you then.